Hey guys, what's up? So in this video, we're going to be covering over the deck that I played in Houston this past weekend. I know some people were really interested in seeing the build that I created for Thunder Empire. A lot of people were, some people I talked to said they weren't expecting me to play this. They thought I would be shifting to one of the newer decks. I really want to do an updated version of Fifth Omni. I will be getting around to do that. There's still just a couple more things I need to hunt down in order to finish it. But this I felt still gave me a very good chance, and I don't like using this term, but I was really screwed out of top 8 at this event. The person who got in over me was someone I beat, and I, you know I'm still pretty ticked about it because I don't get me wrong, I don't think I could have won the regional because there were just a couple of decks that right now that they just have no check to them, and I'll get to that in a second. But I feel that I deserve that top 8 spot. I was pretty upset about it. I'm still a little salty over it, but I'm over it. In the same way, it's like the best thing I can tell you guys to do when and this is going to happen if you ever compete in major events, you're going to come across a situation where you truly feel that and even if you sit down and do the math and go, okay, both of the players that I lost to, one of them was undefeated and one only lost once, but this guy lost to someone who was X3, and his other loss was to me. So how could he get in over top 8 with me? I don't know. You're going to run into situations like this, and the best thing I can tell you to do is do not hold it in, get mad, let it out, and then just move on. And unfortunately, that's what we all have to do in those situations. I'll admit, I packed up my stuff, I said goodbye to my friends, I went to my hotel room, I had my minute to be mad, and then I went and ate food and hung out with my friends some more, and then I felt fine. So the best thing I can tell you to do is, if you ever do find yourself in a situation like this, take your time, have your minute to be pissed, and then unfortunately you just gotta move on. But I'm gonna go over all the rounds that I played, and I'm going to give you my opinion about those decks, and then I'll get into the profile. So, first round of the tournament, I didn't have an opponent. I literally sat down at my table, and it was a no-show. The opponent, I guess, just entered for the free bag of goodies, or just completely spaced, or what. So my round 1 was a no-show. So round 1 I played Casper, as we say. Round 2 I played against Folktale. I have never played against the Folktale deck before. It's a Dungeon World deck. It is one of the newer ones from what I understand. I didn't know anything about Folktale, guys. It was a pretty interesting deck. I know the guy. He's someone from the locals in Norman, Oklahoma, close to where I used to live back in Oklahoma. And I know that guy very well. He's a very good player. Unfortunately, he just hadn't had a lot of playtesting with the deck, and all this and that. But I will say, from what I did see, the deck does have a lot of potential. The item they have that basically sucks all the monsters into the soul and then able to shove the monsters back out onto the field seems very effective. So I look for that deck to actually maybe become, maybe not meta, but become an underdog sometime. Round 3 I played Godpunks. I fucking hate this deck. Godpunks, to me, this is a deck that has no check to it at the moment. They can use your gauge to call out their monsters, and whenever they attack, if you have one or less gauge, which is entirely possible by them paying with your gauge, it forces you to discard, and there's no way to respond to this. They need to come up with a way to stun this deck quick. Godpunks is a disgusting deck for the meta. I do not like it. I do not agree with it. I think they need to come up with a way to check this deck quick, or when the next time they decide to make an alteration to the restricted list. There are a couple of cards that I really think should be hit now, and the reason I say now, because some people are like, well, the deck just came out, man. If you hit it now, what are they going to do? This is what happens every single time. When they introduce a new mechanic or they introduce a new deck, the first things they push out, they're good. And they're good enough to piss players off to where they either hate the deck or they love it and they play it. if you already hate it now, you're going to hate it even worse in a couple of months when even the more broke shit comes out. So I feel this deck needs to be checked immediately. So for the next set or two, look for some cards to be coming out that are specifically made to protect you from discarding or prevent your opponent from making you discard. I see this as a very highly probable thing, or at least something to check them, because it is needed. When I did play them in this round, I did win. So that was round 3. Round 4, I played against Astral Dragons, the Galaxy Dragons. This was probably one of my favorite in-tournament matches that I've ever had. It was a very back-and-forth match. We had to go to all 3 games. It was the first round of the tournament where I had to go to all 3 games, and I really enjoyed this match. The Astral Dragons, guys, they have some of the most amazing spells in the game. A spell that essentially says +2 gauge, +1 life, and draw a card. That's pretty amazing. They have a card that lets them call out a monster from their drop zone during your turn, specifically the one that directs attacks to himself. So you basically create a shield like that on your opponent's turn with Soul that has Soul Guard that you have to attack twice. So that is pretty stupid. They have a double attacking weapon, and this is a very good, scary deck. You are going to see more of this since it's one of the main protagonists in the new season. Expect this deck to really pop up, and it's going to get more support. I can guarantee you that. Beat this guy in Game 3, but it was literally a close match, and it was one of my favorites of all time. Round 5, and I have it in big, bold letters here, so I wouldn't forget. Electric Deity, and then I have in parentheses, fuck this deck, and here's why. I'm okay when Bushiroad or any card game company in general produces a new idea, produces a new deck. That's how you have to. That's how you have to progress in this gaming industry, I guess, or whatever, however you want to phrase that. But you know what I mean. And this deck, every deck should have a pro and a con, and there's really not a con to this deck as of right now. You have the ability to equip a card at the start of your opponent's main phase as a weapon that has 12k defense at no cost to you. So your opponent has to link attack you to even have a chance in most cases. And this deck has some of the most broke spells I've ever seen. I don't know what they're called because every one of these spells sound like someone sneezing. Some long name of, I don't want to make people think I'm making fun of any kind of language here, but some weird Japanese name that I have no idea how to say, and each one of them is longer than the next, but they have 3 different spells, and here's the 3 that stick out. 1, their weapon that allows them the bell of Kaguramushio something. But you know which one I'm talking about if you know the deck. It's their main weapon. And you're like, well, it's only 1. Well, I'm getting how they get this so easy. You get to equip something to use it as an offensive tactic on your turn, and then it bounces back, and at the start of your opponent's turn, you equip it again. And since you're equipping it, it doesn't have to be paid at any cost, and they go to 12k defense or 8k at minimum. And it's hard for certain decks to hit 8k, and that is stupid. You have Amaterasu, who can get up to, I've heard as high as 15, I'm not really sure how. Then you have Susanoo, who gets triple attack and penetrate while having 3 crit. That's dumb as shit. And then you look at the spells they have. They have one that is basically Draconic Exchange on crack and steroids. It lets you pay 1 life, put the top 3 cards into your gauge, and then you get to look at your gauge, take any card that's in your gauge, and put it into your hand. So it lets you essentially thin your deck and then look out of all these cards that you've thinned and pick what you want. Then they have another card that they pay 1 gauge and they can search out their item or either one of the monsters they equip. Then they have another card that they pay a life and they draw 2 cards, and if they have a monster equipped as an item, they draw another, so they draw 3. And it's like, okay, so you pay 1 life and you plus 2? How's this fair? And the answer is it's not, guys. Me, my friends Sam and Christian, and other people that I see at these events, we sat down and talked about it. This deck really is not fair. Bushiroad needs to check this really, really quick. Because this deck is going to, I think, affect tournament environment. I don't think it's healthy. There is a and see, the people who were attacking, Tomonoshin for Thunder Empire, they said it was too broke because I gotta search once per turn. All these spells that I just told you about for Electric Deity, they're not hard once per turn. So you can activate them multiple times in a turn. That is dumb, and that needs to stop like yesterday. They need to stop producing all these cards. One deck that I did not play also, that while I'm on this rant, I'll just go ahead and cover, was Link Dragons. And they also, Link Dragons is what ended up winning the Houston Regional, by the way, if you hadn't heard. This deck is broke because literally they fill their board with monsters that have the ability to share the abilities of everything that's on the board. They have a spell that you use to pay 1 gauge, and then you get to gain as many life and draw as many cards for every D-share ability you have on the field. So you pay 1 gauge essentially to possibly draw 3 cards and gain 3 life. Oh, and by the way, this card is also not once per turn. So if you have 2 of them in your hand, play both of them, you will gain 6 life and draw 6 cards in a perfect world. That is stupid. And there's a lot of these things that they're coming out with they really need to fix, or the restriction list needs to start being a lot more active. But that I'm going to save for another video. If the restriction list needs to be a little bit more, if it needs to be constantly updated or things like that, that I'm going to cover in another video that I'm kind of working on in my head. I know that's a scary place to think about, but next we're going to go into round 6 where I played Dual Golems. This was a very fun game because I've never played against Dual Golems before. I did win this game. By the way, I did lose to Electric Deity, and I will admit part of this was probably because my mind shut off of how dumb the deck was. And then in round 7 I lost to Godpunks because I just couldn't keep up with his stupid discard abilities. So pretty much the only reason of the 2 rounds I lost were to Electric Deities and Godpunks, and both of these decks, Godpunks and Electric Deity, they both need checks, and I'm looking for in future sets for them to get a check because they need it bad. But I made a lot of changes to the deck, and it worked out very well. It's just unfortunately for the Godpunk and the Electric Deity matchup, they just so let's just go straight into it. So I changed the buddy. The buddy is now Misfiring Demon Globes. This is just a good solid go-to buddy for the deck because you're going to summon Globes pretty much all the time in every game. So Globes, basic size 1 with 3,000 power, 1 crit, and 1k defense. He helps you get your resources flowing. Whenever another Thunder Empire enters the board, you gauge 1, and then you get to draw the top card of your deck, and it activates once per turn. So there's that. Next, we're going to go into one of the main win conditions of the deck, the only item I play in the deck, and that is Overturn Battleship Satsuki G. So Overturn Battleship Satsuki G is from Hero World, and she is a size 5 monster with 12,000 power, 3 crits, and 5k defense. Now, obviously there's no way this monster can be on the board. She is mainly in here just to be equipped and rode as a station item. So you pay 3 gauge, and then you get to put the top 4 cards of your deck into its soul, and then 2 monsters from your drop zone for a 6-card soul maximum. She has Penetrate, Soul Guard, and the station ability. Her overturn is what you use to win games and use defensively. Keep in mind you can use this defensively, guys. If your opponent on their turn is fixing to launch a lot of attacks at you, you can use Satsuki's ability on your opponent's turn to call monsters out to protect yourself, and then in the end phase, call out the monsters that you really want for your next turn. So Satsuki is... I love... Some people think Satsuki variants aren't as good anymore now that the restriction list hit us, but Satsuki is, in my opinion, the better one, because just her overturn can really, if timed properly, can either win you the game or swing the momentum to you. So that is that. Next, this is something that surprised some people, as I played 3 copies of Thunder Empire Corpse Leader BarrelBots. So BarrelBots, size 2, 13,000 power, 2 crits, and 6k defense. He has a call cost of 2 gauge, but during your turn, he immediately gets double attack. And if you have at least 3 worlds in your drop zone, he gets triple attack instead. And then his overturn is you discard a card out of your hand, and then during that turn, he gets +1 crit from every other world that's in your drop zone. So if you have 4 worlds in your drop zone, he gets +4 crit, and he becomes 6 crit, and he can attack 3 times. So that's pretty scary. Really good against the Electric Deity matchup. I honestly wish I would have played 4 of him. But I also played 3 copies of Awakened as Thunder Emperor bots. I wish I would have went to 4 and did 4-2. But this bots is still really, really good. He doesn't have a gauge cost. You just have to take 1 Thunder Empire monster off the board and place him. So he requires a sacrifice as of sort. He has natural double attack, but then his counter skill is you can pay 1 gauge to restand any card on your board. So you can use him to get an extra attack in. But BarrelBots really came in handy. So next, for our size 1s, obviously our 4 copies of Globes. So I've already explained him. So only 3 copies of Operative Sphere. I cut down 1 copy of Sphere to make room for other things. He's still a really good card, and I really feel that he still needs to be in here. But when he's placed, you immediately gain +1 gauge and +1 life. But then if you have 2 or more different worlds on your field, you get to draw a card too. So that's it's pretty easy to do, honestly, but 3's a good number. Then we play 3 copies of Yellow Bat. Yellow Bat is whenever he enters play, if you have another Thunder Empire on the field, you get to discard a card from your hand, draw 1, and gauge 1. So size 0, he really just kind of helps you thin the deck and find what you need. 2 copies of Furious Bots SD. 3,000 power, 2 crits, 1k defense. Whenever he enters play, if you have another Thunder Empire on the field, gauge 2 and gain 1 life. So he basically just gives you more resources. So good card. 2 Wibbly the Phantasmagoric. When he enters play, search your deck for any Thunder Empire monster, send it to the drop zone, and for the turn he is called, he also becomes the worlds listed on that card. So you can use this to help set up your drop zone. He was really good when Fighter's Oath was at 3. He has lost a little bit of his step, but he is still a good card, and he actually won me a game because of his second skill, where if there are 3 different worlds in your drop zone, he gets +1 crit, so, and he becomes 3 crit as opposed to 2, so, and he becomes 6,000 power as well, so he is still a good card, and you can use him still with Red Thunder Emperor's Awakening to search out pretty much anything in the deck. So finally, we play 2 Vagrant Dragon Seimaru. When he enters play, you put the top card of your deck into the gauge, and then if you have 2 or more different worlds on the field, you can bounce a card back to your opponent's hand. And then we play the 1 copy of Connect Ninja Tomonoshin. This card got hit to 1 on the restriction list for Buddy Fight. I really think this card should have been untouched now, because with everything that they came out with that isn't once per turn, this isn't really that bad compared to them. So Tomo no Shin, in my opinion, should be at 4 again. But when another Thunder Empire monster enters play, when he's already in play, you get to look at the top 3 cards of your deck, put one of them, those cards into your hand. So, and the rest go on the bottom. Next, for spells, 3 copies of Red Thunder Emperor's Awakening. So, put the top card of your deck into the gauge, gain 1 life. If there are 3 or more worlds in your drop zone, you get to take any card in your drop zone and put it back into your hand. And then if there are 6 or more worlds in your drop zone, you also get to draw a card. So this card is just nothing but resource regain for you. 3 is okay. 3 copies of Offerings for the Thunder Empire. For the Thunder Emperor. This card kind of replaces Fighter's Oath for the gauge loss that we lost for that card. When this card is played, and you can only play this in a Thunder Emperor Fangs deck, you can either gauge 3 or gain 3 life. So this gives you some utility. And this card is not once per turn, so that is, I guess, the one nice thing you can say about it. 3 Demon Lord Roaring Dragon's Blast. Pay 2 gauge, destroy every monster on your opponent's board, and then draw 1 card for each monster that was destroyed. Keep in mind, if that monster has Soul Guard and they use Soul Guard to stay on the field, that still counts as a destruction. So, very good card. 3 Black Sandcastle. Set spell, Darkness Dragon World. As long as this is set, your opponent cannot bounce your Thunder Empire back to your hand, and you can send this to the drop zone, and the next time you take damage, the damage is reduced by 3. So it acts like a shield as well as protection from being bounced. And then we play 3 Jupiter Barrier from Star Dragon World. Whenever you cast this in response to an attack, it nullifies the attack. Then, if you have a monster on the field with Soul, you can remove 1 card from their Soul to put the top card of your deck into the gauge, gain 1 life, and draw 1 card. You use this with Satsuki to cycle out the dead cards that might go into her Soul when you station her. So, 2 copies of Bots X-Link. This is just a very good standard spell for Dragon World. If you make 3 or more attacks during your turn, look at the top 3 cards of your deck and put 1 into your hand, put the other 2 into your gauge, and gain 1 life. So, 2 copies of Bring It On. Bring It On is basically just Green Dragon Shield, really. Whenever an attack is made at you, cast this, nullify the attack, and gain 1 life. Only 1 copy of Drago Uno now. I still wish I could play 2, but I had to find room and I had to cut this down to 1. Drago Uno, you can only cast this if during your opponent's turn and you have 5 or more different worlds in your drop zone. When you cast it, you discard your hand and draw 6 cards, and then for that turn you can't be dealt damage. But the downside is if you cast this on your next turn and you don't win your opponent and you don't finish your opponent off on the following turn, you lose the game. So this is kind of like a last-ditch effort to try and get a win in. Be aware that if you are playing Thunder Empire mirror match and you cast this to stay alive and then you start your next turn, your opponent can cast this right back, and then you just instantly lose. So just keep that in mind. And then the 1 copy of Fighter's Oath. This is just too good not to play. Whenever you cast this, +1 gauge and +1 life for every world that is present on the field. And then we're still playing the 2 copies of Turbulent Thunder Spear X Tempest Ulti-Buster. You may only cast this card if you have attacked 4 more times during your turn, if you have a card with Bots and its name on your field, and you have an item equipped. Pay 12 gauge. The gauge cost is reduced by 1 for every attack you made, and then deal 20 damage to your opponent. So if you made 9 attacks during that turn, you only pay 3 gauge. I've been able to cast this card for 1 gauge before, so it is possible. You just have to get multiple attacks in, which this deck is very capable of doing. And then lastly, for the side deck, the 10 extra cards, I did change it somewhat. I did cut Jack altogether. I don't think Jack is really needed in the sideboard anymore, but I am playing 2 copies of Mazeria in the sideboard now. I actually took Mazeria out of the main board. Mazeria is a key side card for the deck, and it needs to be in there. Because against certain matchups, if your opponent gets their board set up, you want to drop Mazeria and wipe it away. So Mazeria, size 3, 6,000 power, 8,000 power, 2 crits, and 6k defense. Pay 2 gauge and put 1 spell from your drop zone into his soul. And then his overturn ability is pay 2 gauge, and then send every card in your gauge, hand, and drop zone and field except Mazeria back into your deck, and your opponent does the same. You shuffle your decks, you both draw 6 cards, and you both gain 2 gauge. So essentially this is a game reset. So if your opponent has their board set up, you can drop this and just go whew, and they have to start over. So it is needed in a Thunder Empire side, at least at a 2 of, in my opinion. 2 copies of Overturned Demon Lord Asmodai. This is needed just for problem removal cards. This is definitely needed for the Godpunk matchup, for that set spell they play that forces you to discard 1 during your turn at the start of your main phase. So he is definitely needed. He might actually be needed as a main board now. Actually, if you're gonna play in this current meta, I would probably recommend 2 to 3 of this for Thunder Empire. Actually, I might actually explore that. I side 2 more Seimaru just to help for certain matchups, things that you might want bounced. In the Galaxy Dragon matchup, this helps. It gets their size 2 out of the way, the main one. Helps against Athora. I sided 1 copy of this just because I couldn't figure out what my 10th sideboard card should be. He's not bad, actually. He's Zappy Ninja Dakuro. He's a size 1 with 3,000 power, 2 crits, and 1k defense. His ability is counter. Pay a gauge and send him to the drop zone, and then you can rest 1 monster on your opponent's field. I never sided him in, but he is a good card. And then for the final spell of the side is 3 copies of Demon Slay Battle Aura Bind. This is an amazing card, and it should be in every sideboard for Thunder Empire, especially with Electric Deities and Susanoo. So you cast cost is pay 1 life, and then you rest a card on your opponent's field with critical less than or equal to the critical of the item you have on the field. So if you have Satsuki equipped, you can rest anything on the field that has 3 crit or less. So, and seeing Satsuki is pretty easy because I put as much draw power as I can into the deck, so you see it as quick as possible. So that is my updated version that I played in Houston. It's very consistent. It's still a lot of fun to play. I really enjoyed Thunder Empire. I'm going to continue playing it. I enjoy it. I don't know what I'm going to be building out of the new stuff. I don't know if I'm going to build Evo Dragons or not. I do like Link Dragons and I do like Astral Dragons. I just haven't decided yet. So I guess wait with anticipation for that. So anyway, guys, I hope you enjoyed this overview of the Buddy Fight tournament and the new deck that I played. Like I said, a lot of fun. If you still enjoy playing Thunder Empire, don't think you have to stop playing it. This deck can still work, and it can still be a huge threat. It does have a lot going for it. So anyway, guys, thank you very much for watching. Make sure you subscribe, thumbs up the video, leave anything below that you wish to share or ask, and I will get to it as soon as I can. Thanks for watching, guys. See you later.